Mathios, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Sirs, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today to our very interesting fire chat with Mathios Rigas, who is the CEO of Energean. Today's Fireside chat is a very important topic, and I'm very happy that Africa Energy Week took the chance to realize the importance of the East Mediterranean as a gateway to the African potential. And I believe with your experience in the East Mediterranean, Greece, Egypt, Israel, lots of experience out there as Energy. Tell us your thoughts on the African continent.
Thank you very much, and thank you for those that stayed. I see that we have a lot less people, so we'll make it worth your while to start with. I guess the question is, what does the East Mediterranean have to do with Africa, and what can we learn from our experience in the East Med and bring it to Africa in general and West Africa more specifically? Let me start with a little story, which is back in 2006 when I started Energean. I took over the only oil field in Greece, a small field called Prinos. It was a $1 million investment back then, with a dream to make the company that I started, Energean, the leading independent in the East Mediterranean. Why? Because I saw the potential. We start with the rocks, but I also saw the risks and challenges that you have above the surface. And fast forward to where we are today, Energean is a $2.5 billion market cap company, listed on the London Stock Exchange, operator in 8 countries. We have invested $3 billion in the last 5 years, and we are producing 180,000 barrels of oil equivalent a day, 80% of which is gas, and in a number of countries that you mentioned in the Mediterranean, in Greece, of course, where we started from, in Italy, in Egypt, in Israel. In Israel, we produce about 50% of the country's gas consumption. And here I start to bring the links and the analogs between the East Mediterranean and Africa. And I'm not going to comment, obviously, on politics or wars or what's going on, which is a horrible thing, and we all want every war to finish. We do a job, we produce gas, we bring energy security, competitive pricing, low electricity prices. What did Israel do? 10 years ago, you're Egyptian, you know the story, Egypt used to export gas to Israel.
Absolutely.
Israel took a strategic decision to make the company energy independent. They attracted investors. Chevron is there. We are the second operator in the country. A stable environment from a fiscal term perspective. Liquidity from the market. Wells have been drilled. Developments have been made. We invested, as I mentioned earlier, in the Karish field and brought it on stream in 4 years. From the day that we were awarded the license, which was January 2017, to first gas, we took final investment decision in 12 months in 2018. 2022, we were producing gas. So I hear some stories about how successful others have been, that it took them 11 years in Africa to develop an asset. And I give a very clear message. Those that want and have the ability, deliver and deliver fast. And that's what Africa needs. It needs committed operators that are able to raise capital, have the technical capacity to move fast and develop the vast resource of Africa, exactly the same as what we did in the East Mediterranean.
Raise capital, because this is a very important point for Africa. And one of the main discussions that we've been talking about in the past 2 days is how to attract financial opportunities into Africa, how to bring in more investments. And you come from a background of investment. You understand investment very well. You understand finance extremely well. You experience, besides your experience and success story in Energean as an oil and gas operator. Tell us from your point of view, what is the creative potential investment mechanism that Africa needs to unlock its potential? What are we missing out?
I don't think we're missing much. I'll give you, again, an analog. When we started, we were a small company from Greece that took on a deep water development in the East Mediterranean. And we took it over 100%. No partner, no major, no big balance sheet. And we structured it properly with offtake agreements, with the right contracts in place. And we were able to raise $1.7 billion of debt and equity to fund our project. So, key message to every government in Africa: it is not only the majors that have the ability to develop projects, and they are amazing companies with very strong balance sheets, with very deep technical knowledge. But sometimes there are assets, and I think in this conference we have seen and talked about a number of them, discovered that remain undeveloped, not because of lack of capital, it's because of lack of interest from the holder of the license to develop those fields. We are in a country that has a vast resource that the major, Total, left. It wasn't a matter of capital. There were all the other issues that needed to be resolved. So, if you want, you can structure projects properly and you can raise capital. So I don't use excuses. And people can say, well, we need government support. When we were bidding against another company for the Karish field in Israel, the other company called Edison required the government to give them guarantees for the offtake agreements. I took the risk. And you have to take risks. And I took the risk, and the risk worked. And we were able to raise the capital, partly because I come from an investment banking background and I understand the market, I understand how to raise capital, but mostly because we structured properly the deal to be able to raise money. So don't take this in the wrong way. There is an abundant amount of money in this world today. The problem is not finding the money. The problems are the right resource and then willingness of operators to move fast. And that's a key message that I've been giving throughout the last 3 days in this conference. Africa needs fast development of the resource. We cannot be sitting on discoveries that remain undeveloped and at the same time have 500,000 people dying because they burn wood to cook in their homes. It is crazy to have countries that have LNG exports and none of this gas ends up in the domestic market.
True.
And I'm referring to Senegal and Mauritania specifically, where they develop the asset, gas is being exported through LNG, and none of this gas ends up in the country. And they have the highest electricity prices probably in Africa. And, you wonder why. Why don't you do a development that includes both, which is what happened, again, in the East Mediterranean, our example. All our projects go to the domestic markets. In Egypt, all our gas is bought by Rigas.
Yes.
In Israel, all our gas is bought by the domestic market. We have no LNG exports, and still we were able to raise money. So the story that we need everything to be exported, otherwise we cannot raise money, it's not true.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Egypt, and Egypt is part of Africa, and there is lots of experience for Energean for you in Egypt. What is the takeouts based on your experience in Egypt from a North African country that we can take and share within the rest of the African continent?
First of all, I love Egypt. Egypt is a wonderful country, and I think it's one of the best places to invest. And I'm saying this for a number of reasons. First, because the country is huge. You have a market of 110 million people that need energy. Second, because the resource and the potential is big. Third, and very important, and again a message to all the African leaders and countries that are here, it has not changed the fiscal terms for the last 100 years. So in Egypt, you sign an agreement, it goes through parliament, it stays the same no matter what. I've been in Egypt, in the Mubarak area, in the Muslim Brotherhood's time, and now in the Sisi leadership. The oil and gas sector did not change. And it is interesting how markets perceive Egypt or Africa as having high risk, and they forget that in countries like the UK, where we are listed, tax terms change every year. So we're talking about, and nobody talks about the risk of the UK because it's the UK, and we're comfortable, and it's okay for tax to be 78% in the UK, but it's not okay
to change in a country like Egypt.
But Egypt has not changed its tax terms, and fiscal stability is an extremely important factor when we decide to make investments. Now, there is no country in the world that has oil and gas that doesn't have its challenges.
True.
If I go through the countries that I operate, in Egypt, with all the positives, you have serious delays in getting paid. You do get paid, but as I say, Egypt pays reliably late. But they pay. But it takes time. In Israel, where we operate, you have rockets and wars and drones, and you have the geopolitical issues. In Italy, great country, great food, great fashion, but you have bureaucracy.
There's always a challenge somewhere.
So there's always a challenge. In Morocco, which is a wonderful country, we went to Morocco. We love Morocco. In Africa, that was our first venture towards the West. One of the best places to invest. ONIM is a fantastic partner, but we weren't successful in finding the resource. So as we come down in West Africa, fiscal stability, transparency,
it's crucial.
No corruption are key factors to allow a company like us and other investors to come and invest more and develop the vast resource of this continent.
Absolutely. I wouldn't agree more than what you just mentioned in your last statement. And I think these are very important factors in attracting investments, especially in the sub-Saharan West African area, where there are lots of resources, lots of potential. And we talk every year in Africa Energy Week about poverty, energy poverty. There's over 600 million people with no electricity. And the whole world is talking about energy transition also at the same time, with lots of pressure on the African continent to take into energy transition into place. How can you create a balance between energy poverty and energy transition? And combine that with the last statement that you mentioned, with stability in the economic terms and the political factors. I think it's a huge challenge for a continent like Africa. What does Africa need to do to overcome these challenges? It's a tough question.
You know, for 5 years ago or 3 years ago, in every conference like this, or in any investor meeting, half the conference, half the investor meeting would be about ESG and energy transition. Today, it's the last question, and in an investor meeting, it doesn't even feature. Drill baby drill, said President Trump, and of course, energy poverty is a very important issue, but energy security has become an even bigger issue in the world today. With the Russia invasion in Ukraine, with the war in the East Mediterranean, and everything that's going on around the world, energy security is becoming an extremely important topic across governments. So before we talk about how we transition to something else, let's talk about how we will secure every country, how we will bring electricity prices down. And again, I'll bring an example. In Israel, during the war, because of the security of supply and the local production of electricity and local production of gas, electricity prices have stayed flat. The day that Russia invaded Ukraine, electricity price in Europe went through the roof because of the stupidity of European politicians to stop indigenous production of any form. And I'm not talking about oil and gas only, I'm talking about every form of energy. So now, the transition, which has to happen, and we have to go to a cleaner future and a cleaner world, I remind you, I'm proud to say that I was the first E&P CEO that committed to a net zero strategy.
Yes.
2019, December, I went publicly and I said, we will be net zero by 2050. Somebody asked me, how will you do that? I said, I have no clue. But I know that that's where I want and I need to go.
Yeah.
So let's solve the issue of energy poverty first. Let's solve the issue of energy security next. Let's solve the issue of affordable energy for everyone. Because it's very nice to talk about transition into nice green stories, but if somebody cannot pay for it, we're not going to do much. And, you know, there's this country here that is hosting us today. What is the perception of South Africa outside of South Africa? Don't come and do business here because whatever you do, it will go to a court from the Greens and they will block you. Result, you just import more LNG instead of producing it. And the key message to every leader that I meet is you're going to burn it. So you have to decide, do you want to produce it or are you going to import it? It's as simple as that. Because if you decide that you want to produce the gas instead of importing it, the path is very clear. Committed operators that find stable fiscal terms, they raise the capital, and those that want can do. Those that don't want still talk about projects that remain in the ground undeveloped. And that's what needs to be solved to get West African oil and gas, and African oil and gas in general, to be developed.
Mathios, my last question. What would be your message that you would leave to our audience here in African Energy Week for this year, before we come next year?
My key message to every government, because there are a lot of governments that are present here, is tailor your decisions depending on the size of the resource. Very big, multi-billion-dollar developments, majors. Smaller developments that are below the radar, medium-sized independents that have the track record and the operation capability and financial capability to develop. Exploration, give incentives to drill as many wells as you can. You need everybody to be mobilized to develop the resource of this continent. And the key messages that I mentioned earlier: stable fiscal terms, no corruption, transparency, and of course, then the investors will come and we will do our job.
Africa Energy Week, stable physical terms, no corruption, transparencies. These are the last words of Mathios Rigas, CEO of Energean. Thank you so much for joining me in this Fire Chat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.